a pedophile was found in a prison cell in a semi-conscious state with marks around his neck. That pedophile wasn't just any pedophile. That pedophile was former billionaire. I'm saying former because I'm not quite sure if he still have access to that cash or whether he would ever get access to that cash again. But former, let's say, ultra rich, playboy billionaire, pedophile, found in his jail cell with marks around his neck in a semi-conscious state. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, you find yourself coming back to this channel often, please consider supporting this content through PayPal, Patreon. Even $1 helps. These videos get demonetized often. Not to mention liking and sharing if you indeed like the video. So reports are coming out that Jeffrey Epstein was found in his cell semi-conscious with marks around his neck. Now, it is unclear what happened, and they're trying to piece together what happened. There's several theories that are in play. One theory is that Jeffrey Epstein tried to off himself based on everything that took place. And, if you think about it, the theory has some legs to it. I mean, ultimately, you have somebody who was a millionaire who essentially functioned in the life of a millionaire and billionaire that was literally detached from the rest of the population. He lived the life that is separate and distinct from us from the standpoint of class. And all of a sudden, all of that gets stripped away at a whim, and you find yourself in a prison cell with a guy who murdered a lot of people and put the bodies in the basement or in the backyard. It's a change of reality that is sudden and drastic, and an individual may try to off themselves as opposed to dealing with the consequences of that. That's possible. The second possibility is that somebody tried to off Epstein. Pedophiles are not necessarily suffered in a prison environment. People don't necessarily like pedophiles, and there's a history of violence towards pedophiles. And in Jeffrey Epstein case, you're talking about a sex ring where it seemed spanned multiple states, let alone potentially even outside the country itself. And even potentially a situation where other people would take advantage of the fact that Epstein was this way. Meaning, we have no idea how far this went. And there seems to be a lot of media and political figures that Epstein was in contact with flying on these airplanes, including Trump, including Clinton. And it seems that these people, some of them, knew. Some of them knew. I guess my point is, with all the attention that this has been getting, there is not a person in that prison that doesn't know that Epstein is in that prison, let alone many of them look at him as being worst of the worst. Meaning, yeah, I murdered this guy and I put the body in the basement and I ate the penis and all that, but that guy's a pedophile. That takes place in prison. So, and I'm saying this from having watching prison shows and seeing guys who are pedophiles, I've been talking to the camera, talking about their experiences in prison. So, that's possible. Third possibility. There's suspicions that he's working for Intel. Meaning there's suspicions that he was working for intelligence agencies. I'm not making this up. This sounds conspiratorial, but it's not. Acosta made point that this guy's above my pay grade and was told to give this kind of sweetheart deal. Now, Acosta lied after the fact, meaning later on when he was like, the prosecutor is saying that, saying that this was something that had to take place and this was the best deal, they can get it and everything else. But at one other point, Acosta kind of made point that this has something to do with intelligence. Is somebody working for intelligence, or is it possible they work for intelligence and this is kind of them trying to get their hands on him and off him before him getting the opportunity to kind of out various other people that may be involved in this? I throw that out there. Who knows? Look, the cops are still trying to figure out what happened. On the more overt level, the most obvious one is probably either he tried to off himself or some in the prison tried to off him. And in this case, they don't know what happened. The cops are still trying to get to the bottom of it, meaning they're still doing investigations and talking to people in the prison itself to figure out what happened. The person who's his cellmate used to be a cop, apparently. That cop apparently murdered a bunch of people and put them in their backyard. He's like, I have nothing to do with this. But everybody. They've even argued that it's possible that he's trying to do this in order to get an easier sentence, or not an easier sentence, but trying to move himself to a different prison. Maybe. I mean, at this point, they're trying to figure out what this is. They're trying to figure out why is this pedophile lying on the ground in a semi-conscious state with marks around his neck. Stay tuned. They're investigating. There's no point in jumping to any of the potential conclusions at this point. All of them are just trying to be worked through. So, if anybody is telling you one way or the other at this point, they are guessing. Look, I hate doing stories where I can't necessarily be definitive about what took place. And I know at this point I'm arguing with myself more so because nobody said anything about this. This is just a thing in my head. And I feel like I would prefer to be able to say this happened or that happened. But oftentimes you're stuck in situations of these are the potential scenarios. And among these scenarios, which one do you edge towards is more right? When the reality of it is, there's no way to know what it is. I can only give you what it possibly could be. What's more likely? Is it more likely that he tried to off himself or that he was assaulted? I think those are probably the most likely two items. Either he tried to kill himself or somebody tried to kill him. I will tell you this though. There are a lot of people in that black book and that was on that ledger on those airplanes that are probably like, fuck. If you get my point. Because the last thing they want is him talking. The last thing that any of them in that black book want is Epstein running his mouth and talking. And I would imagine not everybody in that black book, of course, is dirty per se. You run into people just in the course of your affairs, and you don't necessarily have close contacts with all of the people that you run into. It doesn't necessarily mean you don't give them your business card or something like that. So I don't think that by any means. But are there some people in that black book that are probably terrified that Epstein may open his mouth? Yes. Charlie Rose was in that black book. Charlie Rose and was working with Epstein to get people that he can abuse at his agency where he was looking for people to hire to be his assistant. Do I honestly believe that Charlie Rose was the only Charlie Rose in that book? No. And do I honestly believe that those people in Charlie Rose's case were adults? That it stopped at adults? I'm sorry, I don't. That's a belief, by the way. I don't know that it's a flat fact, so don't misunderstand me. But if there was one, I suspect there were others. Other people knew. They knew and didn't say anything. If the people wanted chest thump, the Michael Wolff stuff, that Trump was the one that turned Epstein in, understand what that means. If indeed Trump was the one that turned Epstein in, he turned him in after a real estate deal went bad and Epstein started threatening Trump. If that is true, however, it would mean that Donald Trump knew in advance that Epstein was abusing children, that was a pedophile, and didn't say anything until it became an issue where they were in contest with one another. That's not a rah-rah Trump. That's actually pretty nasty. I'll leave it here. If you enjoy the content, like, share. I'm putting this article at the bottom, but this is being talked about on a few places at this point. Thanks so. Bye-bye. Oh, and one last point. Pay attention to the story. All of these stories are going to be demonetized when I put up, just by very mentioning Epstein. Yes, everything that I just said is true. Everything that I just said is in mainstream media. CNN will report the story and not get demonetized. But my black ass does it. I get demonetized. Pay attention to the story, though, and I'm following the story because there are political implications. Nancy Pelosi's daughter comes out and says, hey guys, some people may shake out from this that you like, but it has to be this way. If she's even coming out saying it, there's a reason she's saying it. He has all sorts of political and media connections. This story is not just a media story. This story is also a political story because there may be people who are in the political space that fall out from Epstein. There are a lot of people who would have been perfectly fine if Epstein had offed himself, because at the very least, it would have stopped with him and it would have been able to get to them. The last thing they want is him out there talking. Stay tuned. This story looks very weird. Weird from the standpoint of how he got his money. Weird from the standpoint of why he's on like the Council of Foreign Relations. Weird from the standpoint of what he has to do from the standpoint of intelligence. Weird in the sense that people don't even understand why he knew some of these people, how these connections were in place, where he made his cash. He didn't even go to school, meaning college. Like there's a lot of oddities with the Epstein story that doesn't quite add up. And it seems within the context of the investigation that is going to take place, there may be some stuff that come out that gets, you know, that hits a lot of big names. All right. I'll end it here. Trilateral Commission. I'm sorry. Trilateral Commission. Thank you. Fact checking real time. I love it. My audience is great. All right. I'll end this here. Didn't want this video to be long. I just wanted somewhat of an update. All right, guys. Thanks all.